righty. Welcome to Detroit in Black and White. It's Friday night here, and so far it's just Jim Nardone, the former police chief in Trenton. Welcome, Jim.
Happy Friday evening to you.
So far it's just you and I. And so we've had a lot going on this week. Why don't we, do you want to start out? And is there anything in particular you want to start out, or you want to talk about the Iranian thing, what's going on?
Yeah, why don't we talk about Iran and Israel and move from there?
All right. So what, is interesting. I was Thursday, I looked at the Wall Street Journal, and I can't remember what time it was, maybe 7:00 or something. And there was a headline that says Israel could start bombing Iran any day now. And I thought, wow. And then before you know it, about an hour later, Israel was bombing Iran. I think whatever, your opinion is on whether they should be doing it or not, I think what's been pretty incredible is the execution of it, the elimination of some of the top military people, the execution of the scientists. And the scientists they've been going after for years. Scientists helping build nuclear weapons there. They had a lot of the scientists, the top scientists there have drivers and bodyguards, and Israel has over the years executed different ones who have been working on these bombs to try to slow things down. So, I obviously I'd like to see something negotiated rather than there be war, but Israel's not a total innocent in this, but either is Iran. They've had proxies in Yemen. They've had the Houthis. They've had the Hezbollah in Lebanon. They've helped Syria over the years. Hezbollah has sent troops to Syria. They've got the backing of the Islamic jihadists in Iraq. And so they have always been able to have everyone fight their battle. And this is really one of the first times really where we're seeing, besides, in the last year where there were little exchanges, this is like all out war. Whether it'll last long, Trump is still trying to get them to negotiate. And I think maybe they're supposed to talk on Sunday, but I don't know. Jim, you have any feelings about it?
Well, I do. It's interesting. You talk about this battle between Iran and Israel. And Israel's, it always seems, trying to defend themselves against numerous organizations, whether it's a terrorist organization like Hamas and Hezbollah, or whether it's, Egypt or Saudi Arabia or Iran or any long list of countries that consider Israel the enemy.
Right.
But here's what people fail to understand. And I don't know if you're a leader, if you're a scientist, if you're an Iranian diplomat, I guess, for lack of a better term, go back to 1972 when I think it was Black September. Is that correct? Can anybody first? Hi, Karen and Derek. How are you? Thanks for joining us. You showed up. Thanks for being here. I think it was Black September that killed the athletes. And was it Munich?
Yes, it was in Munich. Yeah.
In 1972, wrestlers and weightlifters and such. I can't remember how many it was.
Right, it was 1972.
2 dozen people, or 15 or 20, or it wasn't a small number, right?
Yeah. Well, I think it says I think 2 Israeli athletes were killed, and then 9 others were held hostage. And I don't know if the Israelis came and eventually rescued.
Stormed it, right?
Yeah.
But here's my point. My point is, the Israelis don't screw around. If you hurt an Israeli citizen, if you go after the Israelis, they don't forget. You can talk about some of these Arabic countries that don't forget, and they talk about the history of going after their enemies, but Israel doesn't forget, and they typically will find you. It doesn't matter. You talk about Putin, executing somebody that lives in England or in the United States or wherever. But I can tell you this, Israel, there's a history of them going into countries. They don't care about the police. They don't care about the national police agencies like the FBI. If there's somebody in Texas that attacks Israel, they're going to get you. they are going to get you. And I don't know if these people know they're signing their own death warrant when they attack Israel. I guess that's a question.
I don't know. I might question whether they would do something execution wise in the United States. I think they would ask for an extradition before they actually went and executed. But they have gone in certainly to Jordan, and they killed one of the top Hamas guys in Iran who was attending a funeral. So they have, yeah. I mean, the tentacles are very long, but yeah, we'll see. I mean, it just creates, it's unfortunate, and the question becomes, is any of it, because of the Palestinians, or is the Palestinians an excuse for countries like Iran and Hezbollah in Lebanon to want to eliminate Israel, which they say that's their goal, is to eliminate the state of Israel. You would hope there could be some peace at some point. I mean, the region is just so volatile for decades and decades. I mean, it's just never ending, and some of it's under the name of God that people feel like, it was the Pope, the Pope Francis, who recently died, who said anybody who uses the name of God to kill or oppress or whatever it's blasphemous. And there's some of the religious differences. I mean, look, we have, even between the Muslims, the Shia and the Sunni, with the Shia being the Iranians, the Sunnis being the Saudis, in different countries where the Sunnis and the Shiites are, have been killing each other for years. And, we saw in Syria where, Assad killed supposedly hundreds of thousands of his own people who were rebelling against him. It's just, crazy. And just, the killing that's going on in the Gaza, the killing that went on October 7th. It's just, savagery.
So that was a question I had for you, Allan, and for our viewers too. How would the landscape look without October 7th? And hello to an early story. Thank you, the Protestants and Catholics. Sure, Mr. 1213. Good evening to you, Stephanie Jackson, Dwellia Boyce, one of our good friends there. Good evening, Derek Henry, Karen Winston. Like we said earlier, they're always with us. Thank you for being here. So, Allan, what's your thoughts on that?
I think there's probably a good, I mean, you never know, inevitably. Look, Iran and Israel, Netanyahu's been wanting for certainly pre October 7th, 2023, he's been wanting to go into Iran. The whole issue has been, look, the Obama administration negotiated a deal for, the nuclear weapons with Iran. Trump came in and said, this is bullshit. We're disbanding this. Netanyahu was never in favor of that. Netanyahu has always been dying to go in Iran and blow up the facilities like they did, I think, in 1983 when they went in and blew up a nuclear reactor in Iraq.
So wasn't the plan to dispose of or dismantle the nuclear arsenal in Iran?
Yeah, or at least keep it down at a certain level where it couldn't be turned in, the uranium enrichment couldn't be turned into nuclear weapons. I mean, Iran's argument all the time has been, oh, we're using this for nuclear power, energy and all that kind of stuff, and that we don't have plans for a bomb. But I don't know that anyone believes that. And if you can see the intelligence just in the last 24 hours, where Israel knew where every scientist was, where every military leader, it's not hard to believe that Israel had intelligence in terms of the intentions of Iran. It's like, if anyone's watched, I don't know if you have Apple TV, but if you watch the show Tehran, which is on Apple TV, which is, it's 2 seasons. I think they made a third, but they didn't want to bring it out during the wars. It's basically the Mossad, which is the CIA of Israel, operating in Tehran. And I think between, you have the Mossad in there who's penetrated Iran, but they also have a lot of people are against the Ayatollahs, and they think it's an oppressive regime. They would like, and they're working with the Israelis as informants. But interestingly, the Israelis have busted some Israelis in Israel for cooperating with Iran, who've gotten, I'm assuming it's for money, rather than ideology. But they've helped, the Iranians, and they've gotten busted and arrested and all that. So I don't know.
So hello, Cynthia Johnson. Thank you. And Mr. Duckett makes a point, and I think he's right on with this. Both sides of this conflict are bloodthirsty. Well, the point that I was trying to make earlier is, you woke a sleeping bear with Israel in October 7th. I guess it's 2023. Is that the day that it was?
Yeah.
When you went in and attacked peace-loving people at a music festival, Hamas we're talking about.
Right.
And did that obviously give the Israelis an opportunity to what they're going to claim to defend themselves, right? So that led to this. It appears that this led to this long-standing look at it as an opportunity for the Israelis to protect their country. They've been trying to do it since 1948, right? And they haven't been successful. They've been victims. The country of Israel has been arguably victims, and right in that little strip of land over there in the Middle East, they've been attacked from all sides for 80 years, right?
Well, I think if you look pre-1967, before the war then, Egypt controlled Gaza and Jordan controlled the West Bank. Israel did not control those areas. And after that, Israel took those areas as buffers and also took the Golan Heights out of Syria as a buffer. I think Israel would gladly give back the Gaza and the West Bank if they didn't have to worry about security issues there. They'd be glad to give it back to Egypt, which I don't think Egypt wants. Egypt has sealed up its border there. They don't want to deal with it. And the same thing Jordan is not letting a free flow of people from the West Bank. I think you can get in there, but so it's a mess there, and it's really unfortunate, because actually, if you go into Israel, Israel's 20% Arabic. There are cities, particularly like Haifa, where Jews and Arabs live side by side and integrate and live peacefully together. So it's not impossible for there to be peace, but you have hardcore people on both sides, and the hardcore Israelis, the Netanyahu administration, some of the people want to annex the whole West Bank, which is a nightmare to do. They want to take back Gaza. And then we have Huckabee as the ambassador now, who's saying that we don't really feel a commitment to a Palestinian state. We believe you could create a Palestinian state in another Arab country, which is just, people are attached to that land. That land is biblical, is just generational, and people aren't going to move out just because if somebody said, Jim, I want you to move out of Trenton because I don't want you here. It'd be like, fuck you. I'm move if I want to move. I have a friend I was talking to him last night. He's Palestinian. He said he's offered his cousin money. He says, I'll give you money. Please leave Gaza. And he says, I'm not leaving. And for people to live under those conditions and be that attached to the land, there's something to it, in the same way that the Israelis are attached to the land. And that's, the craziness of it all. But there has to be some solution at some point. I mean, the fighting just can't go on forever.
But here's the challenge, right? Hamas is not the Palestinian people. The people that live in Israel are not the government. When you come to the United States, half the people that voted in the last election believe one way and the other half believe the other way. So, they can't identify Donald Trump or Joe Biden or whatever with the American people. It's not the American people. Unfortunately, it's the people that continue to suffer.
Yep. I agree with that 100%. That's, particularly, look, Hamas was elected in a free election. In fact, I had a friend in DC who's a lawyer who was one of the monitors in the 2005 election in Gaza, where Hamas won. And now, the U.S. said, well, wait a minute, we want a democracy, but not that kind of democracy where people pick Hamas. But there hasn't been an election since. And I think there's certainly people who are unhappy with Hamas. But at the same time, look, people are also getting limited information there. They don't have, free press there. Maybe some are able to get, some of the news on the internet and stuff like that. But yeah, the people aren't, and look, Israel, there were hundreds before this war on October 7th, 2023, there were hundreds of thousands of Israelis marching against Netanyahu who wanted to weaken the Supreme Court, allowing for the legislature to rule over criminal matters. And so
it's not the Israeli people, and people are identifying.
Some are. Certainly there's some supporters. When I was there in I was there in November, December 2022, and there were plenty of Israelis who were upset about Netanyahu winning, but there were others who said, I talked to some Israeli cab drivers who said, oh my God, we need more. We don't feel secure here. We need Netanyahu. I talked to Arab cab drivers who said, oh my God, Netanyahu hates us. This is going to be horrible for us. And so it's, and then there's just a mix among the Israeli population. There's some who hate Netanyahu quite a bit, quite a few. And there's others who think he's, doing the right thing. And, it's interesting. Earlier today, we were talking, our other show is that Netanyahu last night at 9:00 prime time here in the U.S. gave a speech explaining what they were doing, and he did it in English. And so some people question, why did he do it in English? Why would he not have done it in Hebrew? And I was saying that, that's, there's certainly a lot of people right now who want an end to the Gaza war. They want the hostages returned and to finish the war. But Iran, I don't think that's a hard sell to the Israeli people. So the real sell is for the Americans, the Western part of the world. And look, Saudi Arabia is no fan of Iran. Jordan is no fan of Iran. So it's not even unified within really the Middle East. And, the Iranians are Muslim, but they're Persian. They're not, they're not Arabic, but there's the Brotherhood of Islam. So, but even then there's a Sunni and Shiite division there. So it's complicated.
Yes. Hello, Marlon, our friend Marlon Holt from Florida. Mr. Duckett makes a point. This conflict is old in October. I think he means October 7th. Israel and her neighbors are mutual mass killers. And he's probably right. None of them are victims, but, this has been going on forever. And it seems like, it'll be going on long after we're gone. Right. So here's the United States has said, I guess it's 30, 40 years ago, whatever it is, we will never negotiate with terrorists. Well, the world's changed, right? In the 80s, in the 90s, places like Lebanon, what they had who we would consider, this is the world, right? We're looking at it as an American citizen. We're looking at, it's not Hezbollah, it's before Hezbollah. I can't remember the name of the organization. One of those.
Yeah, there was a PLO.
Not the PLO, but it was a group that would be considered, I think it was before Hezbollah, a terrorist organization here in the United States, but they were building schools and the water system and controlling public safety and some of these things in some of these countries, right? People that we looked at as terrorists, right? Evildoers. But to the people of those countries, they don't look at Hamas as a terrorist. They look at Hamas as a protector of their lifestyle, correct?
Well, I think there's two divisions. I mean, in Hamas itself, and the same thing I think with Hezbollah, but Hamas has the military wing, and then they have the government wing. The government wing provides social services, provides all these different services to the people, operates the water systems, deals with whatever, the taxation, all those kinds of things. And then you have the military wing that does the fighting, that does what some people will describe as terrorist acts. And so, I think on October 7th, it was the military wing that carried that out. And I'm not clear if the government side they probably gave the approval because they probably didn't have a choice, but the military wing was carrying that on. The same as Hezbollah. I mean, their social services provided in Lebanon for a lot of groups. So and Hezbollah is also part of the government there. They have seats in the parliament there. So it's not as clear cut as we see them only as fighters, but there's there are so they're benevolent in some people's eyes, but it is illegal here in the U.S. and the FBI, even here in Dearborn and stuff. The FBI monitors where people are trying to raise money for Hezbollah, and donors and stuff like that, and that is illegal, and they can charge somebody with, with support of a terrorist organization, and they have. So
should we take a break, Allan?
Great idea.
And get back to Terry, Derek, and Sam.
Let's do it.
Hi, I'm Eric Sabri, your Wayne County Treasurer. Are you living in the home of a deceased family member and you're facing property tax foreclosure, or maybe you know someone who's in the same situation? The probate process may be helpful to you. If you file a probate petition and notify our office, the foreclosure proceedings will be halted during the probate process. We have several nonprofit partners who have free attorneys who can assist you. Contact our office, 313-224-5990, or email us at taxinfo@waynecounty.com. Don't lose your family property. Some of these properties have been in the family for 4 or 5 generations. Contact us now. We're here to help.
By the way, welcome back. I want to pass on this little tip to everyone because all of us, or many of us, work on our computers or are watching our computers every day. And I had my eyes checked yesterday at the optometrist and waiting for a new pair of glasses. And my optometrist is actually my college roommate, one of my college roommates. And I asked him about what's the best practices for when you're using a computer. And he said the best practice is called 20-20-20. When you're staring at a computer for 20 minutes, you should take a break, look forward 20 feet, and basically what it for 20 seconds. And basically what it is, when you're looking at your computer, your eye muscles are tight. And so when you look up and look forward, then your eye muscles stretch out. So anybody who's having eye strain, which I spend a lot of time on the computer, obviously, working, it's just a health tip to keeping your eyes healthy. So
that's a great point, because I spend sometimes way too many, and I'm retired, and I spend 6 to 8 hours a day.
Yeah, it's easy.
Or so.
Yeah.
Marlon has a couple of points. Thanks, Marlon. 2-state solution. I think it's bigger than that. I think that's the issue. I don't think we're looking at it globally enough. I get your point. I think you're right, but we need a 25-state solution, I think. For Israel to hit the way they did tells me Israel's inside knowledge from Terry McCrimmon on how the Iran government works. What's interesting about that is, there was a lot of, before, when the Shah was in charge, was it the Shah in the 80s, there was a lot of multinational U.S. companies doing business in Iran.
Before, I think it was 1979 that they
79
overthrew the Shah. But look, the Shah was the Shah was an oppressive regime, but they were friendly to us. We did have big, companies working there, but they were oppressive. And now, it's sad when finally people get a break and they get rid of an oppressive regime and they put in even more oppressive regime. And I think that's one of the issues, is that you had a lot of college students who were back against the Ayatollahs, and they were, oppressed and they were shot down. And then there were women, I'm not even sure where it's at, I've kind of lost track, but there were women who didn't want to wear hijabs. And the Ayatollahs were cracking down on that. So, we talk about, we hear freedom for Palestine and stuff like that, but Hamas is not exactly a liberator of people, you know, and
But Derek points out that they're democratically elected. So how do you know some of the folks over there are?
they were, but there hasn't been an election in 20 years.
Oh,
so,
yeah, I guess. But.
So how does it? But I mean, look, ideally, a two-state solution. The problem with the two-state solution is that there are militants on both sides who don't want it. There's Palestinians who say, no, Israel is ours. When you hear from the river to the sea, that's, you know, a chant of means get rid of Israel. It's our land. And so you have people who want it all. And then you have people in the Netanyahu regime like Ben-Gvir and Smotrich who want to annex all of the West Bank, who want to take back the Gaza. And then there's so much confusion. The message here from the U.S., Trump says we want to take it over, start a resort.
Yeah, right. Atlantic City of the
nobody wants that here nobody wants to get involved with that type of, you know, that we being the oppressors suddenly like that. And people, that's their land. We have to figure out something. I mean, the problem was Netanyahu, you know, the criticism was Netanyahu was building up Hamas to oppress the Palestinian Authority on the West Bank, while, you know, and so it backfired. But, you know, when I was there in 2022, I went into Bethlehem, and I may have told the story before. I went on a tour in Bethlehem. There were 21 people. They were all foreigners from like Russia, China, and all that. And we had a Palestinian tour guide who was Christian. And he told us, he said, hey, look, you know, the Christians are leaving Bethlehem. And I raised my hand and I said, what's going on? He said, I'll talk to you later. So we were at a souvenir shop, we're having a cup of tea. And I said, what's going on? He says, well, the Christians are nervous. They don't feel safe here. They're leaving. And I said, well, what about the Palestinian Authority? And he said, they aren't doing a thing. And he says, to be honest, if it weren't for the Israelis, the Palestinians, the Fatah, as they call them, in the West Bank, and Hamas, said it would be all-out war. It would be nasty. And so, you know, you have a lot of, you know, in some ways, Israel's a unifier for in the Islamic world, where, you know, not everybody gets along, and so, but they all do. A lot of them hate Israel, and so that's sort of a unifier there, and it's a savior for, you know. So.
Hello, Edward. And Terry has a statement there, a good point. But I think Marlon made a point. And I just, Israel's going to fool around and find out. I think he misspelled fool. I think he might have meant something else, but just kidding, Marlon. I don't know. You know, yeah. Israel, I think Israel is the screw around with Israel and find out is kind of how it typically works. But you know, like any organization, the farther they stretch out their resources, the more difficulty they may have. But
well, you know, Marlon mentions and says there's a lot of resentment toward Israel, and I'll say this: look, Hamas's goal, as far as I can see, Hamas's goal on October 7th was not to eliminate Israel that day, but certainly do as much damage as they could. But they knew what they did in setting babies on fire and raping and stabbing and killing. They knew Israel would go insane. They knew Israel would go in and do like way crazy things to Gaza. And so the idea was that all the Arab states, like, and including in Iran, Hezbollah, the Houthis, folks in Syria, would all unite and go after Israel and wipe out Israel. And that was the goal. They haven't achieved that. It doesn't look like they will. But what their other goals have been is that there's a lot more resentment around the world than Israel against Israel. Israel is not as beloved as it was and not that everybody loved Israel even before October 7th, but a lot less. And a lot more people hate Jews all around the world. I mean, we're seeing attacks. You know, we saw it in Boulder. We saw 2 people from the Israeli embassy murdered in D.C. There have been other plots to kill. There was a plot out of New York City, I guess, to kill, a mass killing of Jews. So that has been successful. And frankly, one of the things that's really disturbing is that Hamas looks at it this way: the more children that are killed, the more innocent civilians that are killed, the more outrage there is in the world, the more people hate Israel, and they're willing to sacrifice those people as martyrs for the cause. And so it's and so yes, there is a lot more resentment toward Israel, and Israel is looked as a pariah state among some of the people. But in Israel, people also look at it like we're here to survive, and Iran's threatening us. Look, for 20 years, Hamas have been firing rockets into Israel, and it eventually culminated with this attack. But Israel was willing to kind of let it go and kind of deal with it. On occasion, when the bombing really got bad, they'd go in for a few days and bomb, and then that would be it. But now we've got we're going on 2 years in October of battle, and so I don't know.
Stephanie says that the God of Israel never sleeps nor slumbers. Very nice comment, Stephanie. Thank you. It's not the Jews that I hated; it's the Zionists, and there's a lot of that conversation. Derek Henry there. And that's kind of the point I was trying to make earlier. If you live in England and Canada and you hate the United States, well, it's not the people of the United States. You hate the government. But those lines get blurry.
Well, I think it's interesting. I think I have a good friend who's an attorney in Dearborn Heights who is. And he's Muslim, and he told me, he said, Allan, and talking about since all this war has started, he says, when people say, and I'm not saying in this case for one of our viewers who said it, I'm not saying in that particular case, but he said there are times where there is no distinction between people hating Jews and Zionists. It's synonymous. He said he was rooting for the Las Vegas Raiders, and one of his friends who's Muslim said, you can't root for them. They're owned by Jews. So is that Zionist? Is that person anti-Zionist?
I don't think that's what they're talking about. I think
the definition of Zionism in the purest sense is that people who support the state of Israel. There's others who see it as Israel controlling the West Bank, Israel having some control over Gaza.
But isn't that just blanket hate?
Zionism. So
isn't that just blanket hatred for people that you don't know? Isn't back in this? I had the fortunate opportunity when I was a police officer to go to. I can't remember the name of it, so forgive me if I get it wrong, but it's a museum in Dearborn on the history of the Arabic people.
Okay,
and it's right there, I believe, on Michigan Avenue there near Schaefer. And the abuse that the Arabic people took in this country for 50 or 100 years, however long it's been, not probably 50 or 60 years since they came to Southeast, since a lot of Arabic people came to Southeast Michigan. It makes you ill. It makes you ill the way we treated some of these Arabic people of Arabic descent, I guess, Middle Easterners, whatever you want to call them. Going back to Ray Stevens had a song about, Ahab the Arab, all this stuff. People forget that Danny Thomas, famous, he was Middle Eastern, right? He has that hospital down in Tennessee, Jude. Right?
St. Jude.
That takes care of these babies, and will be taking care of them for another 50 or 100 years. And people say, well, I don't like this group of people because they're Lebanese, or I don't like this group of it's. We have to fix that, right? It's gone on in this country for too long.
Yeah.
And
Marlon, I'm not trying to suggest. Yeah, I understand where you're coming from, and there are some distinctions there, and there are. Look, I don't like the Netanyahu government. I don't like what they're doing. I don't like, but I also don't like what the Trump administration is doing either. But we're entitled, as we're Americans. We still love America. People, there's plenty of people in Israel who don't approve of. I have cousins in Israel. They would go to the West Bank for dinner. They had friends, Palestinian friends. After the Intifada, the second Intifada, they didn't feel safe going there. But one of my cousins who works for a high-tech company, she was, right when the war broke out, she was in touch with a friend, a Palestinian friend who she worked with in the West Bank. It's not. I have another friend who lives there part-time, and he actually lives in Boulder the other part-time. He has a photography program for young Israeli kids and young Arab kids, and they work together, and there are people trying to make something work there that they can live together. It's like I say, 20% of the Israeli population is Arabic. It's not that it can't be done, that people can't live together,
Here's my dear friend Jan. Thank you, Jan. They had the courage to do what was needed, but what is the end game? And Israel's, I expect their offense is a defense, and that's what they would tell you, that they're not playing offense, they're playing defense. I want to tell you a little story. We're talking about hate a little bit. So about an hour ago, I decided to go for a little walk before the show around a neighborhood. And 2 streets over, I saw a pickup truck, and it had, I guess, what you would consider maybe conservative. It had a police, a thin blue line, little sticker on the back, a flag, U.S. flag with a thin blue line on it. And it had a sticker on the right side. This is a Chevy pickup truck, and it said something to the effect of, "Go home, we're full." All right. Well, there's a guy that lives within 100 yards of me that has an autistic child who's opened a company in Trenton, Michigan, 20-some years ago, 22 years ago. He's here taking care of his kid. Well, I don't know if he's on his way to Mexico or it's not that simple. When we hate, we're too simple when we hate people. It's too easy to hate people. Instead of looking at every situation, when we talk about what's going on the border, there's some people, as the Pope said, that are escaping, environmental, an earthquake, bad water. We can't blanket statement to send everybody back. Go home, we're full. That's what it said on his truck. And I thought, this guy's an idiot. I mean, just his answer is, let's just send everybody back. My point is, it's easier to hate than understand in some instances.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting because Trump has now come out with the statement saying, because, there's video of immigration officers chasing immigrants through the strawberry fields in California. And Trump has now come out with the statement going, well, we've got some of these farm workers been working there for 25 years, and now we're going to get rid of them, and we might not have enough farm workers. And he said the same for basically the hotel industry. And he says, maybe we have to rethink some of that. There are a lot of countries, particularly in the Middle East, a lot of Arabic countries and Israel, who have imported workers from other countries because there are some jobs that most of the population won't do. And some of those jobs are construction. Some of those jobs are agricultural. We have an economy that runs on, immigrants, and some who are not here, and some they're taking away. Some have gotten legal status to stay here and work, and they're taking that away. I mean, they're being so indiscriminate without any thought. And then they're going to realize that some of the business people are going to say, we don't have, we're talking about slaughterhouses. We're talking about construction. The construction industry has like 1 million workers who are undocumented. And we're behind in housing. There's a housing shortage of new homes coming in, and which is only going to mean more cost to people. When there's less homes, you're going to pay more. And so it's crazy. Well, let's
give you an example. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, if you want, I was curious about the thoughts. I was going to play this thing with Senator Padilla, who was at a press conference with, I guess, Kristi Noem in immigration, and he was pushed out by the FBI, and then taken to the ground and handcuffed. And here's a video here.
Guys, ready? And sir, hands up, hands up. I'm Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your.
I also want to go
Hands up.
specifically how many of our ICE agents have been docked.
On the ground. On the ground. Hands behind your back. Hands behind your back.
Leave my hand.
Now, I mean, look, here's a U.S. senator. Even if they asked him to leave, which he's certainly entitled to be there, but even if they did say, you need to leave, and then that's one thing. And then the second thing is there was no need to put him on the ground and handcuff him. And then later they were like, oh, we didn't know. He was saying, I'm a U.S. senator, right while they're pushing him out. And I just think, really, I mean, this country really needs to maintain a civility here. And I mean, we're going to see tomorrow. It'll be interesting. We have the big military parade in honor of the 250th anniversary of the U.S. Army, which I think is just over the top and foolish and an expenditure that we don't need. And then we're going to have protests all around the country, including here in Detroit, where there's going to be at Clark Park in Detroit, Troy, Ferndale at 9 and Woodward, at the Lansing State Capitol, all around. So it'll be interesting to see. Here it says, Marlon Holt says Padilla was wrong and disorderly. Well, you know what? First of all, he's entitled to ask questions. And even if he is what you perceive as disorderly, he's disorderly when you start pushing him. They could have said, sir, you have to leave. So, and then if he had, they just grabbed him right away and started pushing him. And, there's a way to do things. I don't think the average citizen was there. They wouldn't have to do that. They could have said, sir, you have to leave. Let's go.
I'm going to give you a different perspective as a former law enforcement guy. First, Terry talked about 1948 American government and European. Mostly it was the UK, right, that set up the government of Israel, Allan. It was mostly
it was the
League of Nations.
It was Britain. Britain
right.
was occupied, what was called Palestine or Israel. They divided the land up and said, Israel is here, the Palestinians here. And that was 1948. And the Arab countries were like, hell no, that's our land. And they went to war right away.
And we had a big part in that, I'm sure, in 1948. Kenneth says the last three leaders of Israel have been incarcerated. Propped up state is corrupted. Is it hate or dislike of behavior, Marlon? That's a great point. Is it the people? But when people hate Israelis or Jewish people, that's like a blanket statement typically. It's not, I like some Jews and I hate. It's typically not. It doesn't seem to be that way from my perspective. All right. Yes, Trump did say, Derek, that he would end the Ukraine war. But I'm just gonna suggest you this. All right, I'm still looking. Padilla was wrong and disorderly according to Marlon Holt, and I'm going to tell you where he screwed up. So, on Wednesday we talked about political theater on this show, about Trump's political theater, and I would argue that Senator Padilla, who I don't know if everybody's assuming that the FBI knew who he was.
Well, he was saying, you can hear him saying, I'm the U.S. Senator.
After he pushed the FBI agent. So here's what happened. All right. We can argue who pushed who first, but I'm sure he could have walked up to that FBI agent and whispered and said, I'm Alex Padilla, I'm a senator, and I have a couple questions. He didn't do it that way, right? To me, it was a planned activity. I'm not suggesting that it was right, wrong, or indifferent. I'm not commenting on whether he should have done it or shouldn't have done it. But I will say there's some political theater, and where he messed up, if you want to defend him, and I'm not going to defend him because I believe this was just an action to make a point. He knew what he was doing. He did it on purpose. He wanted a reaction.
It's 34 seconds. Can we watch? I'll let you finish. Can we watch it again just so we?
Absolutely.
Let's see it one more time.
Judge Redhead and Bell. Sir, hands up, hands up.
Also, I want to
I'm
talk.
Senator Alex Padilla. I have questions for the secretary because the fact of the matter is a half a dozen violent criminals that you're rotating on your.
Well, I think what we see is that that guy immediately came at him. He was talking.
Well,
and
he's protecting his, whatever you want to call it. So the FBI has one person that they're responsible for, and from my perspective, he was combative. I'm not saying that they should have put him in handcuffs, but I'm telling you this: I would have let him out if I had one subject in the whole world that I was protective of, and I was the Secret Service, whether it was the President of the United States or the Secretary of Defense or a U.S. Senator, he would have expected the same protection that she received. That would be my argument.
He wasn't attacking her, though. It wasn't. But
He
the
was
thing is,
combative, Alan. He was combative.
okay. But even once he said, "I'm a U.S. senator," they took him out in the hallway. They put him down and handcuffed him.
Okay, let me comment on that. It was too late. It was too late, right? It doesn't matter if you're. So let me make this point, right? He's talking about all the other people and how mistreated they may be. Why does he think he's better than a farm laborer? Why does he think he's more important than an auto worker? He's not more important.
He's
but
representing
he came into this event and behaved that way.
He's representing.
But they didn't know that. They didn't know that until after the interaction started.
They didn't give him a moment. He said, "I've got a question," and they came right at him. Look,
He was very aggressive. He was very
time.
aggressive as a police officer. He would have got any citizen would have got
one more time.
Judge Redhead and Bell. Sir, hands up, hands up.
Also,
I mean,
They're not pushing him. They are calm and just trying to restrain him. He's the one that's pushing back. So if he just said, "Okay, I'm not fighting you, but I am a U.S. senator, and I like that," he didn't do that.
Well, listen, I'm sorry I got here so late. Y'all held it great. Anyway, he shouldn't have went to that press conference.
should not have.
No, he should,
Well,
because he knows how these MAGA people are. You know what? There's no question that you know what they don't care if he was a U.S. senator, whatever. He should have never went over there. Listen now. You can be. Yeah. I'm watching Gunsmoke. That was
the Federal Bureau of Investigation. That was not the MAGA people.
Yeah, but the MAGA people control all the shit. You know that.
I'm going to tell you right now, those.
But a U.S. senator should have had some respect. They don't respect anybody, but he should have known that. He should have
said he's a U.S. citizen. He should have said he's a U.S. senator. He could have whispered in her ear before and said, "Hey, do you mind?"
I think she knew who he was.
Now, maybe I can't answer that question, but we're assuming by their statement that they're just FBI agents. They didn't know who he was, and I think they acted appropriately up until the time that they escorted him out of that room.
I
back.
disagree. I think they overreacted. I think they
they overreacted, but they don't give a fuck.
And they handcuffed him outside, which
that I have an issue with. That I think was
they say, "Okay, sir." Even if they pushed him out, but then they take him down. They say, "Okay."
They did not have to cuff. They did not have to cuff him. They did not have to cuff him. You give him some kind of respect. He showed up. Oh man. You know what?
Thank you, Mr. Duckett, for your position. I appreciate it. I'm giving it to you as if it was James Craig and he was a police chief of Detroit, or Todd Bettison, and somebody approached the podium like that, they would get the exact same treatment, whether they're a dishwasher or a U.S. senator.
But we have had elected officials arrested for protesting, etc. This is nothing new.
He wasn't peaceful in his approach. I will suggest that, Mr.
I blame both him and I blame the agents. There's no question about it.
They could have come up to him right when he started speaking and said, "Sir, you don't belong here." And
This is a different Allen. This is different FBI, man.
Well, it's
It's a
look.
different. It's a different. It's a different FBI. It's a different.
It doesn't mean we have to accept it. It doesn't mean we have to accept it, but we have different opinions on it. Obviously, I respect your opinion, Jim. I just don't agree with it. You know?
Well, you know what? It is what it is. You know. So yeah, gentlemen, y'all been holding down the fort. You know.
Now we're gonna sit here and listen to you for 10 minutes. You owe us 10 minutes.
Oh, I owe you 40 minutes.
Filibuster.
I had a long fucking day, you know, there's no question, you know, and I got here. I'm glad I can make it.
So are we.
Tomorrow we got a
I have a question for Adolph.
Go ahead.
Mary Sheffield has put out a press release saying that bragging that she has now raised $1 million before the primary. What does that mean? And who's that coming?
Shit. It's like Beyonce. It's like Beyonce can go to Little Caesars, sell tickets for $500 and $1,000. Can't sing a fucking lick, but I give her credit. I do give her credit for being out front. You know, she'll spin the narrative. She, you know, $1 million. She's gonna make. Way she's looking is that okay? I'm gonna be one of the finalists. It ain't over till it's over.
How about you don't like my music? He's on Adolph time. Are you guys somewhere together drinking a beer or something? Because
I don't even drink a beer. You know,
you don't like my music. You're like 35 seconds behind Adolph, so you're right on time.
Hey, don't beat me up, Jim. You know, y'all. I'm glad I got good folks that can come and do what they need to do.
It was the Allan Lengel show, and I was just trying to, you know.
No, you were equal, co-equals.
Well, no question, and you know, but no, I listen. She got $1 million fucking dollars. The narrative is there. You know, do you really think it's a runaway that she? Man, Detroit faces one of those futures with the pensions, fire, police, etc. The next mayor they got some stuff they're gonna have to deal with.
Right.
Is she prepared? Hey, you know what Derrick Henry said. I was watching Gunsmoke. Yeah. I was watching Gunsmoke, and I know on Gunsmoke, it looks like it's a town. It looks like it's Dodge City, but we all know that it's just smoke and mirrors. And this is what we're looking at. Is it all? Is she the real deal, or is she somebody that, you know, people saying, okay, I keep hearing her name and I'm going to vote for her.
So I have a question for the both of you. Is the real mayor's race not even started yet?
I don't think so. I think that the general election is the real mayor's race. Now,
so it's Mary Sheffield and whoever else.
I ain't even saying that because I don't know. Mayor Sheffield never ran a citywide race.
To me, the impression is they're treating it like a marathon when it should be a sprint at this point.
Right. You're absolutely
they're all kind of just pacing themselves when it's like you should just be all running the 100-yard dash and not running a 5-mile whatever. And so, I mean, if they've got money, I mean, Mary, I think is figuring she'll save some of the money for the general election that she.
But that's what Freeman thought.
Yeah, right.
That's what Freeman thought.
And so I don't know.
You're absolutely right. You don't like my music. Yeah, they really didn't kill a lot of folks. They killed a lot of people in Detroit. It just, you know what? If people really start looking at substance of what these candidates are saying, and you know, it's always easy to say, I'm doing affordable housing. Oh God, I can go and do that.
Right.
I'm improve the schools. Oh, I can say that too.
Yeah, there
How?
was a
How is all this shit? How are they gonna do this shit? You
there was a
know,
lady at WXYZ tonight. I guess she's running. I don't know if she's the person that they keep talking. She's going to solve all the problems. That's exactly where you are right now. She doesn't have any idea how to solve these problems.
there's no question. Now, I've heard people say, well, I had somebody to say, well, there's a couple people that I like. I like Ty Perkins, but he can't be elected mayor. He's an attorney. Somebody told me he had an unfair advantage. I said, how? Well, he's trained to speak. I said, listen,
They're all. There's not a bad speaker among that group. I think they're all.
And
I got to tell you, I was impressed by Mr. Ty Perkins, who I never met, who was on our show last Saturday. And if you want to take a look at it, it's out there. But I tell you what, that's a smart man right there.
Yes. What's her name? Santil Jenkins. You know, if you talk to her, listen, Santil, she understands the game real well too.
Fred Durhall speaks.
Yeah, well, you get your message out. Can you get your message out? And I say that Mary Sheffield has done a hell of a job. Beyonce has held a hell of a job getting her message out and getting up on stage, and the glitz and glamour of all this shit. She looked good. She looked real good. But is it live or is it Memorex? Is she the real deal or is it just some bullshit?
Yeah.
So you don't like my music's talking about a couple of things, the homicide rate in Dodge City. And I guess my question to him is, he's in Toronto, around the Toronto area. So is the Calgary Stampede the Wild West in Canada? I mean, what's the Wild West in
Canada, people think Canada was crime-free and all the shit. They killed the Native Americans and they did all kind of shit, just like their cousins and their counterparts here in the States. The Wild West was created by Hollywood. You know, they didn't have Marshall Dillon didn't stand at the end of the street and they had gunfights and shit. They was shooting people in the back and they was doing all kind of other crazy shit, you know.
Right.
But he is right. Homicide rate, it wasn't. It was more people dying in New York City during that time than they was dying in the so-called Wild West.
That's because everybody had a gun.
Yes.
So that's the other question to his point is they banned guns. Maybe it was because everybody had a gun and only the bad guys have guns in New York City. I guess that's the question.
Yeah, everybody had a gun. I listen.
And they still do out there, but you don't. You know, Helena, Helena, I should say.
It's Helena, and I was in Helena. They have 4 black people in Helena, and one of them is the mayor of Helena.
Or Sioux City, South Dakota. There's not a lot of crime.
I'm gonna tell you, the mayor of Helena is an African. He's from Liberia originally.
Really?
But he's a black person.
Wow.
You go to Juneau, Alaska, you see black folks. You see, we everywhere. You know, Helena, a beautiful, beautiful country. You know, Idaho. Bartender in Boise told me and my wife, don't go north. Nazis control the north. The militia control the north. You know, you don't want to go that way.
Wow.
Well, this is America. So
Crazy.
Yeah. Allan, your final thought.
My final thoughts.
Yes.
I have the TV on to my left, and the Detroit Tigers are winning 7-2 in the 7th inning. So
And you and those fucking Tigers, they 20 games.
Look, you watch Gunsmoke, I watch the Tigers. You know?
Okay.
We need distractions.
Well, I don't like the older gun folks. Gunsmoke. He done 20 years. He ain't been shot 150 times and killed. And you can tell he can barely walk and shit. It's like watching Blue Blood. And
I'm
Tom
curious.
Selleck, he can't walk or talk. Yeah, but I
I'm curious, when
understand.
you watch Gunsmoke, what do you see any relation to today's society when you're watching it? Do you think?
But no,
No, totally.
Some bullshit.
Yeah.
It's just some bullshit.
Okay.
Yeah, Jim.
I'm glad you made this. I'm glad you made the show, and I'm glad our friends and our colleagues stayed with us throughout the show. We were expecting a couple more of our colleagues.
Listen. I left my phone. I didn't have my phone and stuff, and I knew Vanessa wasn't coming on the show today.
So I just hope we didn't bore our friends too much, that they'll come back tomorrow. It wasn't Allan. It was
you got your fans. People, there's people. There's the Allan Lengel fan.
We know that Deadline Detroit is a legend.
I have 2 fan clubs, 2 fans.
Yeah, and there's the Jim Nardone fan club.
There's one person in that club, and she's upstairs, and I think she's already in bed. So I have at least. Well, Jan's my friend too, but I hope I didn't bore anybody too much tonight.
And I thought we was gonna have the new director of public relations for the police department on, but something happened. They've been very busy, the police department, with what was happening. So maybe we can get her next week. Former Free Press reporter.
And tomorrow we have
Tammy Daniels. We got Marty Drulart from Taylor. Man, they got a whole lot of shit going. And you remember Jadonna Dingus?
Yes, from Girls Point.
Man, they put a hit out on her in West Bloomfield. Her bill was hijacked by a state rep, and she went to talk about it at a public meeting, and they called the police on her. Didn't want her to be there.
Really?
Yeah. So she'll be at McShane's.
Maybe she have Senator Padilla should represent her at the meeting next time.
Yeah. I think it's a great idea. And how about, like my music talks about Detroit. Remember when Toronto was one of the great spots, the entertainment spots for every half of Michigan was in Toronto to go to see Phantom of the Opera. Toronto's a cosmopolitan.
Well, they incorporated about 100 cities around it. They basically got bigger and bigger, and then they got to have some of the same problems at the urban cities in America.
I like Stratford. Has anybody been to Stratford? Have you ever been to
I've never been there, but I have been in 1974. I could be off by a year. Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, Jesse Colin Young and the band were playing at the University of Toronto Stadium, and I went up with a group of friends to watch that. And look, Gordon Lightfoot. If you watch the Gordon Lightfoot documentary, which is phenomenal, he was.
You ever watch the Murdoch Chronicles?
No, is that good?
Y'all don't watch the Canadian shows, but I see Ira Todd is commenting. Today, I met with somebody, I won't say who it was. They sang Ira Todd praises. Man, they say this guy.
Ira's the guy, man.
They say this guy.
He's a legend in Detroit. He is absolutely a legend.
Dude, and we're going to have to get him to come back on. There's no question about it.
Yeah. But I don't think you can drive from Toronto to Detroit in 2 hours unless what are you driving there? You don't like my music? I think it's about 4.
What I hate about Canada, I don't want to watch a football game where the field is 130 yards long. and they kicking on the third down,
Canadian Football League.
and they got half a point or whatever, 5.2. The Eskimos and the do they call them the Eskimos anymore?
Argonauts, right? Toronto Argonauts, I thought.
Yeah, Stampeders and all kind of other stuff. When I was a kid, we had a pharmacist in the township. He played Canadian football, CFL.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah. That's how I learned about the Canadians.
So how about Ira's being humble and thinking that everybody doesn't know he's a legend? So
well, Ira is a legend. We gotta get him back on. And I just want to thank everybody. It's a Friday night. Some of you people need to be out clubbing.
thank you, everybody.
What y'all doing what y'all need to do. But
Thanks for putting up with us tonight.
I swear. Well, we had we had the two old white guys holding down the fort.
Right. I was worried it was just going to
They
be.
had done a hell of a job, a hell of a fucking job. I want to thank you very much. You know, I had to put a little color in this.
Thank you.
You had to bring the Detroit and black and white.
We almost got Teresa on tonight, so we could.
You don't want to mess with Teresa. She's wearing a mask or whatever she's doing. Thanks, everybody. We'll be at McShane's, Michigan, and Trumbull. They open at 7 now. They got breakfast, and we can
come and have a breakfast. They have good breakfast at McShane's.
we
Great breakfast.
We can snack on something. And we'll be back tomorrow at 10 a.m. and on Wednesdays and on next Friday. This is Adolph Mongo, Jim Nardone, Allan Lengel. Thank you, Teresa. Thank you, listeners and viewers.